Welcome to What's in It For Me, a podcast that explores the evolving landscape of diversity in the workplace. I'm Jason, and in today's episode, we're going to tackle a contentious and often misunderstood topic, the concept of reverse discrimination. Is it a genuine concern or is it a misconception? We'll examine this concept through historical and legal lenses and understand how initiatives for diversity, equity, inclusion, and access are designed to enhance fairness for everyone. Defining reverse discrimination. First, let's break down what we mean by reverse discrimination. This term is often used to describe situations where individuals from a majority or historically advantaged group feel they are being unfairly discriminated against in favor of minority groups. This feeling is particularly voiced in discussions around affirmative action and diversity policies. It's a term that carries a lot of emotional weight and often a lot of confusion. Today, we're going to unpack this, exploring both the fears and the facts. Historical and legal context. To fully grasp this issue, we need to look back at its roots. Affirmative action, a term you've likely heard, emerged from the civil rights movement, a response to systemic racial inequalities. It's important to be mindful of historical context and events that have significantly shaped the experiences and rights of various groups. Understanding these historical impacts can provide deeper insight into current challenges and the necessity of diversity initiatives. We will look at how this played out in legal and social contexts. Some key historical contexts include redlining. This was a practice particularly prevalent in the United States where certain neighborhoods, often those predominantly inhabited by African Americans and other minorities, were marked as high risk for real estate investment. This practice, backed by federal policies, led to systemic denial of services, loans, and other financial opportunities. Redlining contributed to significant wealth gaps, hindered property ownership among minorities, and reinforced segregated communities. Indigenous resettlements. The forced relocation and resettlement of indigenous peoples have had long-lasting effects. In the United States, policies like the Indian Removal Act led to the Trail of Tears, where thousands of Native Americans were forcibly removed from their ancestral lands. Similar patterns of dispossession and cultural erasure occurred in other countries, profoundly impacting indigenous communities' rights, cultures, and identities. Women's suffrage. The women's suffrage movement was a decades-long fight to grant women the right to vote. It was a crucial step towards gender equality, but the journey didn't end with suffrage. Ongoing issues include gender pay gaps, reproductive rights, and representation in leadership roles. The suffrage movement's history highlights the importance of continual advocacy for gender equality. LGBTQ rights. The struggle for rights and acceptance of the LGBT community has a complex history marked by periods of severe repression and gradual progress towards recognition and equality. Historic events like the Stonewall riots were pivotal in galvanizing the movement for LGBT rights. Despite advances, challenges remain in areas such as anti-discrimination laws, healthcare, and societal acceptance. Civil rights movement. In the United States, the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 1960s was a pivotal era in the fight against racial segregation and discrimination. Key legislation, like the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act, were monumental in advancing equality, yet racial disparities continue in many areas, including the criminal justice system, education, and economic opportunities. Disability rights movement. The fight for the rights of people with disabilities has led to significant legislation like the Americans with Disabilities Act, the DAI. This movement has worked towards ensuring accessibility, accommodation, and non-discrimination, yet challenges remain in employment, social inclusion, and access to services. Here's the other side of the coin. Understanding the historical context of certain policies and events, such as Western expansion, land-grant universities, and the GI Bill can provide insight into the systemic advantages that have historically benefited white populations, particularly in the United States. These events and policies have had long-lasting effects on societal structures, economic opportunities, and racial disparities. Advantages of Western expansion. The westward expansion in the 19th century, often romanticized as a manifest destiny, involved the displacement and marginalization of indigenous populations. White settlers benefited significantly from government policies and support, gaining access to land and resources. This expansion facilitated the accumulation of wealth and property for many white families, advantages that could be passed down through generations. In contrast, indigenous peoples faced loss of their ancestral lands, cultural erosion, and forced assimilation. Land-grant universities The Morrill Act of 1862 and 1890 established land-grant universities with the intention of promoting higher education in America. These universities were often funded through the sale of federal lands, which in many cases were taken from indigenous peoples. While land-grant universities have played a significant role in advancing education and research, they primarily served white students for a significant part of their history. Racial segregation and discriminatory admission policies excluded minority groups from these educational benefits. The GI Bill. The GI Bill, formerly the Servicemen's Readjustment Act of 1944, provided various benefits to World War II. veterans, including low-cost mortgages, low-interest loans to start a business, cash payments for tuition and living expenses to attend college, high school, or vocational education, as well as 1 year of unemployment compensation. While the bill did not explicitly exclude veterans of color, its implementation through local, state, and private sectors often did. As a result, white veterans were more likely to receive education and housing benefits, contributing to the growth of the middle class and the creation of wealth that could be passed down to future generations. In contrast, veterans of color, particularly African Americans, were often denied these benefits or steered towards vocational training rather than college education and faced discrimination in the housing market. These historical contexts highlight the systemic advantages that have contributed to the racial wealth gap and disparities in educational and economic opportunities. Recognizing these historical advantages is crucial in understanding the ongoing challenges related to racial inequality and the importance of intentional policies and efforts to address these disparities. Being mindful of these historical contexts helps in understanding the deep-rooted nature of many diversity issues and the ongoing efforts required to address them. It also underscores the importance of empathy and informed action in diversity and inclusion initiatives. But why is this misconception so common? Often it's because some organizations have approached DIA superficially, focusing on visible diversity without fostering true inclusion and equity. This approach can lead to tokenism, where diversity is seen but not necessarily felt or effectively utilized. Let's talk about what real DIA looks like. It's about understanding and appreciating each employee's unique background, experiences, and viewpoints. It's about creating an environment where all employees feel respected and are given equal opportunities to contribute and advance. It was and is about leveling the playing field, ensuring that those who have been historically marginalized are given equal opportunities in education, employment, and more. It's not a matter of granting privileges, but correcting systemic imbalances. Here's a story that brings this to life. Meet Mark, a middle-aged white male working in a tech firm. When his company began implementing affirmative action policies, Mark felt a twinge of anxiety. Would his prospects be diminished? As months passed, Mark noticed something interesting. The workplace grew more vibrant and innovative with diverse hires. Mark found his role evolving, collaborating on projects he never would have encountered before. The policy wasn't a barrier, but a bridge, not just for minority employees, but for everyone, including him, yeah? Diversity initiatives and equity? Diversity, equity, inclusion, and access initiatives are not just buzzwords. They're about fairness. They acknowledge that barriers exist for certain groups and seek to dismantle these obstacles. The aim is not to give undue advantage, but to ensure fair access and treatment. When everyone, regardless of their background, has the same shot at success, the whole organization benefits. This is the cornerstone of equitable practice in the workplace. Creating an environment where everyone feels included involves addressing these perceptions through open communication and education. It's crucial to articulate that diversity and inclusion efforts are about creating equal opportunities for all, not about disadvantaging any particular group. Workplaces should foster dialogue that allows all employees, including white individuals, to express their feelings and concerns, ensuring their voices are heard and valued. This can be achieved through inclusive leadership, training sessions on diversity and implicit bias, and transparent policies that demonstrate how diversity benefits everyone. Emphasizing empathy, understanding, and mutual respect in all interactions can also contribute to an environment where each individual feels valued and included regardless of their background. One of the most pervasive myths about diversity initiatives is that they result in giving minorities unfair advantages at the expense of others. But let's look at the data. Studies show that diverse and inclusive workplaces perform better, innovate more, and have higher employee satisfaction Diversity isn't about taking away. It's about adding perspectives, ideas, and strength